Welcome back to another episode of Unofficially Opinionated. We are your host. I'm Nate. We have Chris here. We have Tim here, and we have Steve. You all heard Steve.
I had to do it.
He had to.
I had to do
He
it.
had to. You heard Steve in the previous episode talking about the reboots, and now he's back with us to give us some of his input. To be honest, we actually started talking, and then we realized that we had some technical difficulties, so we're starting over.
Yes.
So basically, we are talking about this story about Colton Haynes and his memoir. His memoir is Miss Memory Lane, and in case you don't know who Colton Haynes is, it's sad that we didn't get the previous conversation. But Colton Haynes is an actor. He's a model turned actor, and he was in Teen Wolf as Jackson Whitmore and in Arrow as Roy Harper. And so I'm just gonna give a brief rundown because there's a lot that I want to talk about concerning his story. So just briefly, he was born into an abusive, well, his parents were abusive towards each other. I don't know if they were abusive. I don't think his mom was abusive towards him, and I don't know if his dad was. It might be in the story, but I don't really know. So anyways, but they were abusive toward each other, and they were alcoholics. He was sexually active at a very young age, somewhere around 13 or 14. I might have that number wrong. He also sexually abused as a child, but it was more kind of like statutory rape, and he didn't really consider it abuse at the time. Upon reflecting on it later in his memoir, he realized that it was abuse, right? He became a model, then he came out the closet, then he went into acting. Then he was told that he acted too gay, so apparently he took classes to act more straight. Then he got into alcohol abuse himself, and he was he was neglecting himself. He got into a marriage. They got divorced. Then his
Now,
mom
when you
died.
say marriage,
hmm
what type of marriage was it? Was this to a man or a woman?
No, oh yeah. So it was to a man. It was to a famous
Okay.
photographer. I forgot. I think his name is
Okay.
Jeff Leatham or something. Oh wait, I could be kidding. I cannot keep my I
Look,
cannot keep
this is all
my famous
unofficial.
people.
Do not quote us here.
Exactly. Do not quote us. Like I'm just giving
Please,
you.
please check something reputable like Wikipedia if you need, real information.
Exactly. So, anyways, yeah. So he got married to this guy, and then they got divorced. Then his mom died, and then he came out the closet officially to like everybody. He told the world that he was gay. And then he said since doing that, he had difficulty landing an acting job. And he did that despite his representatives telling him, and that's a very important fact, he did that despite his representatives telling him not to. Chris had said earlier that he had watched him on Arrow and he didn't perceive him as being gay. So, but he
Yeah,
wasn't.
it never occurred to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was before or after those masculine classes, but as I mentioned before, I have no problem taking some masculine classes. I could probably use some. So
Right.
if anybody knows of where I can get some of these, masculine classes, let me know. I'm in the DC metro area, so Twitter, wherever, Facebook, let us know.
That is ridiculous, but okay.
It is ridiculous, but also probably a little bit true.
Steve told us he had never seen any of these shows, but Tim, have you seen Arrow or Teen Wolf?
I can't say before I thought WB was stupid, but
Well, you said it, so.
Oh boy, how do you really feel?
Well, so do you remember Roy Harper? You remember I guess he
if you're talking about the main character on the show,
No.
yes.
He was
then
a
I
The
don't know.
character that Colton Haynes played.
Yeah.
Nope.
He was
He was
I watched.
like the street kind of kid
Yeah.
that kind of got in with them, and
and then he started
he was
taking
into the
that
sister
drug
for
or
a bit.
whatever it was, and then he just became angrier and whatever. You don't recall that?
No, I watched like maybe 2 or 3 of those episodes, and then The Flash came on, and I never watched another episode again.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think we pretty much
Yeah,
we all three of us really kind of just stopped watching it once they started doing crossovers.
It was too much to keep
It
up with.
was.
Like
It really was.
I
yeah,
got tired
And the
of it.
problem is like you couldn't it's almost like you had to watch them both in order to stay on the storyline, you know? Like I
Right.
just stopped. Anyways, so he
Yeah.
had difficulty landing an acting job and then he wrote a memoir, right? So I think my first question, well, actually I wanted to get into why the story was important. It's about like representation, right? So we've talked before about representation in all types of aspects, like black representation or different ethnical representation, especially like in the US, and then also like LGBT representation and stuff like that. Like all of these things are important. So I had a question, like I just wanted to know if you, for you also, just hearing the story briefly as I kind of gave a synopsis of it, do you think that this book would be interesting to be read by non-LGBTQ plus people? What do y'all think about that?
So when I heard he had a memoir, so he's older than I thought he was. He's about 34 right now
Yes.
as of recording.
Hmm.
So not that much younger than me. I'm 39. So okay, he wrote a memoir. I think I would need to know more about
Hmm.
him for this to kind of attract me to it.
Right. Okay.
If simply the name Miss Memory Lane is not enough for me to be like, oh, let me go read that book. That sounds interesting, right? That doesn't pull me in,
Hmm.
and not really knowing like his
Hmm.
story. I'm not sure, people that aren't already in the sphere of like what he's
Hmm.
doing, how that would pull them in. And as far as his sphere, I don't follow him enough to know like what his demographics look like as far as who's following him,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Um,
So this is
yeah,
going to
I don't know.
be like a very harsh comparison, but the comparison isn't for comparing events, just for comparing, I guess, situations. So, we all pretty much, I think we all read Anne Frank, right? So it was a diary, right? We all read
Oof,
Anne Frank, right?
boy,
Yeah, so
yeah.
we're nodding, yeah.
Basic
I
reading in
don't think
school.
I
Oh, you
did,
didn't?
but
Really?
look, I mean, here's the thing. You guys, I think, went to mostly public school,
Yes.
right? That was not
No,
my
no, no.
situation.
Steve
Oh,
didn't.
What I say?
He was
Steve, you
What
were
I say?
homeschooled
Yeah.
for a while,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I forgot. I apologize. I will not put him in the rough streets of
The Seattle
suburban
area.
Seattle area. But yeah, so I mean, a lot of those classic books that get off topic, but I just didn't read
Okay.
them because they weren't in our
Right.
curriculum. So I didn't. I'm aware of Anne
Hmm.
Frank, but no, I did not read
Okay. Well, I mean, basically everyone pretty
I
much
can't
knows it's a
remember it
diary
for what it's
about
worth.
a girl. Are you really? But you read it though, right?
I don't remember much. Yeah, I do remember reading it. I mean, it's all a blur. I mean, that's what, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? I don't know.
Okay. 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 Well, so the thing is, I'm not trying to compare like situations. Like she was living during Nazi occupation times and stuff like that, right? But it was her diary that everybody like they found it and then they, then they published it into a book sort of thing. So then like the question would be like, is it really necessary to read her book? There's a lot of books out there like, Schindler's List and stuff like that for the same situation. Would it be like necessary to read the book of someone who has, kind of had to struggle? Again, we have to admit the fact, I
it.
mean, what he was going through is not the same thing as a Holocaust, right? Nowhere near the same thing. So I don't want to compare those things. But like, interesting to see what was happening from this personal point of view. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to me, as I look at it, like it reminds me a little bit of so Trevor Noah wrote
Yeah,
a book,
yeah,
right? Kind of an
yeah.
autobiography, right? So, and he was probably around the same age when it came out, I would imagine. He's not that much older or about our age. So, and that I did
Hmm.
read, or actually I listened to it. He read it himself, the
Oh, nice.
audiobook, and it was really great. And again, for me, I listen to it because, again, I'm aware of him. I interact with kind of what he
Right.
produces more, right? And so I was like, I like his comedy. I like his commentary. I'm going to go read the book. And the book goes into a lot of things that, again, like we wouldn't necessarily relate to directly about growing up in South Africa, you know, apartheid, all that kind of like, we had a race system here in the U.S., but it's not the same kind of thing, right? So for me, like listening to that, it was eye-opening to kind of hear what he went through over there, kind of comparing how some things are similar, some things are different, especially as being around the same age. Like a lot of things tracked. I could really kind of see how they kind of lined up during the time period. And it was weird to hear like things that were happening there that just seemed like it should have been like 100 years ago, right? And I'm like, wait a minute. Right? He was in high school same time I was in high school. That's crazy, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, you know, so think about this book. I would equate this to more a book that's like probably, that.
Yeah, that's a
better where you know, it's probably impactful, but you know, who reads it, who's going to gain something from it might be more about the person's popularity. But if you tell me, hey, look, this book really is eye-opening, and I think it's illuminates certain pieces of struggle, I might actually go and read it, right, and kind of hear what he went through to kind of hear that perspective.
Okay. What do you two think?
Yeah, I would agree. I think stories that tell the journey of someone that's kind of giving you an exposure of different types of the experience of what it means to be human. I think those are good to hear the different stories that people had. I also too think though that I think going back to your question, is this something that people should read, or would this be something that's interesting? I think it does go to something that Chris talked about. If it's relatable, I think he talked about age. This guy's my age. That's something. He's from a different country, so that maybe gives some parallels, so we can kind of get a window into something different. But maybe there's some points there that we can connect to. That makes sense. I'm thinking about myself. I'm not seeing any of his shows. I never heard of the person before, so me reading it would. I mean, I don't know. I would be just going into reading about a stranger, but maybe someone knows my story and they say, okay, here is something that I'm struggling with. Maybe reading about someone else's journey and how they overcame can give me encouragement and hope that maybe I can overcome something that I'm struggling with as well. And so I think that's where it could be inspirational and it can be a positive thing. But then obviously, if someone may be sensitive or have strong feelings about one way or another how things were done, you know, I can only imagine you bring up the previous book, Anne Frank. That's maybe a period of time where someone may be a little sensitive to the things that were going on at that time. It may be hard to read, especially if there's something that's pain in your life and you've not dealt with it. It may be a challenge. So there may be different types of books and different type of biographies, different type of stories that can lend themselves to certain people who are able to relate. So that'd be my feedback.
That's on a side note, I am actually really happy that you all haven't heard of him. Like, I'm literally giving you all exposure to somebody like a market that he doesn't have access to, you know? So I'm happy about that. Look I'm his publicist. No, just I am not his publicist. Anyways.
Well done, Nate. Well done.
So anyways, yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I do agree. I think it is definitely possible that this book should be read by people who are non-LGBTQ persons, but as you both were saying, if it's pertinent, you know, like if it's pertinent to the situation. So
yeah, so I guess, Nate, like as you think about the book, like having read it, do you think it's something that people outside his specific community should be reading, right? Like, is it something that everyone should read? Is it valuable to anyone? Or do you think it's more like, hey, if you have similar struggles as him, is valuable, but outside of that, maybe not as valuable? Uh-oh. I think we lost Nate. Nate is broadcasting remotely from an undisclosed location and from his cell phone, and we lost him for a second. I assume he will be back shortly. But one thing I was thinking about kind of these memoirs and kind of these personal stories. Have either of you read the Ta-Nehisi Coates book, Between the World and Me.
I have not, unfortunately.
Have you heard of the book?
No.
No.
Should I be embarrassed right now? I'm not quite sure.
Not too much. So he is a black journalist. I think he's around our age, maybe slightly older than us, but he grew up kind of in Baltimore. He ended up kind of getting into, again, journalism. He actually wrote a lot for the Atlantic. He ended up actually having a run writing the Black Panther comics for a while. He's involved in one of the upcoming Superman movies, Tim, with a black Superman. He's involved in writing that, and so he writes a lot about the black struggle. And so reading that book for me was interesting because as I was listening to that book, he reads it. I was also, when I was taking the subway in Baltimore, so walking to the subway, listening to that book about kind of his struggle growing up. Was kind of touching. And for me, even more so than say like Trevor Noah's book, his book is really kind of confronting racism. And so for me, I think his book is valuable to like not only black people read the book, right? I think anyone should read that book to benefit from his perspective. Sometimes it can be a little biting, right? He's not he's not trying to hold anyone's hand, right, as he's talking, but I found that book really valuable in kind of just talking about his struggle growing up in Baltimore, how he was seen, and kind of how and then going to school, kind of how all those things worked out. So I really enjoyed that. I think that might be a similar book to the one that Nate's presenting today.
Yeah, and I hear you using similar terms, that kind of how I'm thinking about it. You're talking about what your life experience is at this particular time and how it connects and relates to what you're reading about. And it sounds as if that is something that makes it a little more interesting. Maybe it brings a lot of value because you're able to connect some dots there of what's going through your mind and what you're processing and what you're saying. I noticed how you brought up the subway there. I'm not sure if I've been on the subway out there in DC, but I can only imagine listening to a book talking about someone's struggles as it relates to race in a place where I think, I was watching some things on CNN recently that was talking about what was happening down there, even within the last few years, dealing with different groups of people coming, and it seems as if race always has some play in it. And at least from my perspective, it always seems like there's different groups in there. Race is at least one of the issues there. And so I think that's what really makes the books valuable. I'm thinking about books that I read right now. I'm reading a lot of professional books dealing with career. That's right now where I'm focused. There's some challenges there, questions that I have in reading about people who have gone through some of the same kinds of challenges that I've been through and see how they've overcome or how they failed. I mean, I can learn a lot from other people's failures. I don't know. Christian, tell me about that book that you read. I mean, did that person have failures that you were able to learn from?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't much about the failures, but really about how he worked through kind of his disadvantage, right? Because it was not an easy thing, growing up poor in Baltimore, and you kind of work your way out, go to Howard University, and end up writing for the Atlantic, as an author, and then writing several books. As I mentioned, you end up being a writer for Black Panther, right? Who would have thought? I'm sure he didn't think that growing up. So for me, it was more about seeing, how he worked through those struggles and how he was able to kind of use that, right, for kind of propelling him forward.
I think Chris was asking this when you disconnected, but is there something here that really resonates with you that I guess gives you hope or helps you? I don't know, something that makes you relate to this person. I guess maybe some of his story is similar to yours.
Well, no, our stories aren't very similar. I didn't become sexually well. Never mind. We're not gonna get into that. But our stories are only similar in the fact that we are both part of the LGBT community. He had an easier time coming out than I did. I belong to a religious community, and he did not. so he didn't really have a real hard time accepting himself. He got into a business he where they told him he couldn't be gay. They told him he couldn't be out. And then, in fact, they were like finding people for him to quote unquote date, you know, to to make it seem like he was straight. Whereas when I came out the closet, I stopped caring about what people thought. Like if I went to a job interview, and I was like dating or something like that, I just tell them, if they were like your girlfriend, I'd be like my boyfriend, you know. And my point was, if you can't accept that, then I'm moving on, sort of thing, you know. So we did have different experiences, but there was a reason why I thought that his there were a few reasons why I thought his point, I mean, sorry, his story is important. A lot for people who are struggling. Well, first of all, for the gay community and people who want to do things, but they're afraid of their sexuality, especially in people who are in like our previous community, our previous religious community, who might also be having, you know, kind of questioning that and feeling having issues like coming to terms with it. But there was also about the fact that, you know, actors in Hollywood are constantly being told that they can't be gay and act in Hollywood, which I think is absolutely asinine. So, Christian, you've seen Bridgerton.
Yeah, that in of itself, yeah, just that comment you made to me, that seems not unbelievable, but it's I can't believe that they would still be that way in Hollywood of all places. It just seems so contradictory, given
all of Hollywood
the way
is
we
gay.
see almost all of right, like given that all media is going, right, like almost every piece of media has some LGBTQ character in it to some degree, even animation now, right? So to me, hearing that is like, he just have bad representation,
it's quite possible.
right? Or was it just back then it wasn't as open as it is now? Or because I'm looking at and it's like, this just seems wild to me. And unfortunate that he had to deal with it.
Listen, we're going to talk about that. This is why I asked.
You know.
So Chris, I know, has seen Bridgerton. Have you seen it, Tim?
Yeah.
Yet? Yeah, and I don't think
unfortunately, I've been.
Tim's not going to watch Bridgerton.
No, it has nothing to do with that. I haven't been watching much TV, and I've been trying to prepare other stuff going on.
Steve, I'm assuming you've never even heard of Bridgerton. Oh, okay.
My wife.
Okay.
Wait a minute. We hit something.
Okay. Yes.
My wife. Yes.
Hey, I watched it with my wife. I feel like I'm sitting up all midnight watching it by myself. It's our show.
I wouldn't judge you. I wouldn't judge you if you did. I'm just
Yes,
saying.
you would.
No, so yeah, in Bridgerton, there are two actors. So the Queen, I forgot her name, and I'm afraid if I switch out of this, like it's going to cut off. So I'm not really going to switch out. But I forgot her name, and she's the Queen, and she is, if I'm not mistaken, don't kill me if I am, she's a lesbian in real life, right? And yes.
Oh, really?
And Anthony Bridgerton, right? He's played by an actor called Jonathan Bailey, who is gay, right? In real life. So in the show, they're both
would not have
straight,
guessed that
right?
one either.
They both
right, yeah, because on the show he and
hot
that
and
chick,
heavy, right?
the tension, like the tension without them ever even like having to say anything, just the looks that they would give.
Yes.
He convinced me. He's an actor. The man is an actor.
They did it. They did it well. So I totally agree. But they also had the same advice. Like they were also told not to come out the closet. It would hurt their reputation and stuff like that, right? And they're older actors, and this is when they were told. This is very recent. Like Jonathan Bailey came out publicly just very recently. I think it was like a year ago or 2 years ago. I could be wrong on that timeline. So it's not back in the past. You know, like Tim was saying, it's recent. It's still happening, which I think it's absolutely ludicrous. You know.
Yeah. Now, one thing I am thinking about is I could imagine the only thing that I could see some logic in, right, is if everyone knows, for example, Jonathan Bailey is gay, right? will it affect their ability to believe,
Hmm.
right, the relationship between him and her on screen if they know for a fact he's not into
Yeah.
women, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, but see, I didn't know he was gay, so I don't know if that would have tainted how I looked at that situation. Now, if he's playing a
Hmm.
gay character, who cares, right? I prefer that he be gay playing
Hmm.
a gay character. Now, a gay man playing a straight character, if is it better for people not to know you're gay if you're playing straight characters and not playing gay
No.
characters? That I don't know from a practical standpoint what the
Right.
effect
So
of
I
that.
saw I saw Steve shaking
I
and
think
nodding
some
his
of
head. What were y'all? Go ahead, Tim. What were you saying?
oh, I think I was gonna say like for Jonathan Bailey, I don't know who he is. I can't think
Hmm.
of something he acted in before. Um, so like not knowing those kind of things and with the
Hmm.
whole introductory of him, um, it allows your mind just to focus on the
Hmm.
character, before you know anything about the character, the person
Right.
who's portraying the character. Um, if the first time you hear about this person and you find out, like, before you even see him his acting or whatever, you find out that he's
Hmm.
he's gay or anything like that, maybe like Chris was saying, that might
Hmm.
taint what you think. But after you watch the show and you get used to seeing the character and the situation, and you
Hmm.
get invested in the character, anything else after that, I mean, you don't care if he's gay,
Right.
whatever, it don't matter no more. You're invested in the
Right.
character that he's portraying on the show, not exactly the person
Okay.
who's portraying the character.
St-
And that, but
Yeah, yeah, and I would piggyback off of that. I think I'm recalling right now times where I learned about an actor after the fact, and it surprised me about the truth that I learned about them. And I don't know if it becomes a distraction. I would actually rather not know because I think it could be a distraction since maybe this is something um, that I don't ever think about. I don't think about is someone this way or that
hmm.
way. I just watch the show, and if it's good acting and a good story, it's compelling, I would just be drawn in or I
Right.
won't. What they are in their personal life, it doesn't matter. It makes me think of, and this is going to be a bad analogy, but
I already
I
presented one, so
remember, yeah. So I was listening to NPR, listened to a lot of NPR, and they were going on about how um, Keanu Reeves is a minority, and I didn't know. I mean, it's not obvious to me, and so I think, or he maybe it wasn't that he's a minority, maybe that he's mixed race or something to that effect. Um, and it surprised me to learn that about him. Now, does it take away from movies and him playing the role of a okay, so not assume, but I think when he was the Matrix, he played a non-minority. He played a non-mixed character, I guess. But to find out that he is one, I don't know if that matters. I would say also this though. Yeah, so I think that may not matter as much to me, but I think I do appreciate if they find people that relate to the character more so than not. I think I would put it that way. So I remember there was a Michael Jackson movie. Another bad analogy, maybe, but there was a Michael Jackson movie, and they had a Caucasian actor playing Michael Jackson.
Right.
For some reason, I feel like they should have a African American play Michael Jackson because Michael Jackson was an African American. Now he went through a transition in his life, or maybe didn't look like one, a
Right.
stereotypical one in the end. But I think I would appreciate that they tried to find someone that could relate to the story. So I would say it that way. I think if someone is playing any type of role, if they could find an actor that could represent that role well, I think I could appreciate that. Doesn't have to be that way, but it makes a lot of sense if they do it. It almost feels like you're shunning a group of people if you don't even let that group represent themselves in the character. Which, like Chris said, they're not even playing themselves, so it almost doesn't matter. But I think it's like a not to respect. That's how I would
that
interpret it.
actually is a very ongoing debate, actual debate. It's been going on for a number of years, and it's kind of spun in a different way. I mean, because I obviously, well, I don't know when it started, but I remember they were addressing like, well, first whitewashing, then blackface, and then stuff like that, and now more recently, it has come into the LGBT realm where like LGBT people are saying, no, we want gay people playing LGBT characters, and then others are saying, no, we LGBT, let's see, anybody can play it as long as they're respectful, because previously gay characters were like portrayed as being camp, which some of us are, but not all of us are, and stuff like that. So that's an actual real debate, and we may end up talking about that in another topic. But what I wanted to kind of focus on was, yeah, like how important is it to actually be your authentic self, I guess, in real life, when it pertains to, well, just in real life in general, and then like when it comes to working. Because what I had two options. I had the option of either referring you all to like Shakespearean times, when like actors, like there were males playing female actors, because females were I guess technically not allowed, I guess, to play, or to be in plays and stuff like that. So the males portrayed them, but knowing that they were a male, seeing them portray a female, was that distracting? I was thinking of going in that, but then that could also, I thought, oh, that topic could evolve into something else, because like after women were allowed, men didn't normally play female parts, sort of thing, and then that could go back and forth. Or I could
Right.
go also to the subject of how important is it to be your authentic self. So basically, like going back to Colton Haynes, he felt like he had to come out the closet, right, to kind of breathe. And a lot of like gay people feel that way, but it's not just like gay people. Like this also, funny enough, this also is about, pertains to Black people in America working in kind of different industries that are normally, I guess, dominated by white people, where they feel like they have to act a certain way. So, quote unquote, not
Yeah,
Black. It
that could
can
be a
be, right?
whole 3 episode series, right? Because there is, your authentic
Right,
self is one thing, right? But also, not all of us are not simply like
right.
one way. You know what I mean? So
No.
so just because I talk a certain way at home does not mean I must talk that way in every single
Mhm.
environment that I'm in. You know?
Right.
So, and I think some people confuse being authentic with not taking into account the context in
Mhm.
which they're operating. If I go to a particular church, right, and they do things a certain way, I'm going to adjust to that, because that's not my space. The space there dictates how they operate. I may not like it, but if I choose to go in that space,
Mhm.
that's how they operate. In certain
Yeah.
corporate environments, English might be the language you speak there. So either you speak English or come with a translator. I'm not going to go in there and speak Spanish and expect them to just
Right.
adjust to that. I think in the same way, certain types of, you could say, Ebonics or African American vernacular are used more casually. That's cool.
Mhm.
That's not a problem. When you get into sometimes certain professional environments, all that colloquial talk from any race, right? You can be from backwoods in West Virginia. They talk a certain way up there as well, right? That just doesn't come into that environment. That's not to say it's bad or looked down upon. It's just that's the way we speak here. Now, some people there may have a perception that their way of speaking is better, and maybe we work on that over time. But as far as the practicality of it, you kind of have to adjust to the environment while still being who you are. No one's saying be fake, but most of us know how to adjust our talk when we're around different people, whether it's our friends versus our parents, or at church versus in the club, or whatever. We know how to adjust. And I think adjusting to the environment is part of life without sacrificing kind of your core internal beliefs. So that's my rant for the day. We'll do the rest for another podcast.
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, and I would agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I back that up. I think that culture would dictate a lot of what will be what's normal. And I agree too that it doesn't necessarily mean what's normal is right. And I think that culture can change, and but it's hard to change culture. Particularly the majority, whatever group is representing the majority, they would sometimes set the what the culture is a lot of times. And but then again, I also too, like, I'm just piggybacking what basically saying the same thing that Christian was saying. I don't know if you have to come in and not be yourself. I think we need to go a little bit further into what does it mean to be yourself. I think it also we have to talk about um, as we grow, we change and we learn about who we are. And I think that who we thought we were when we were teenagers may not be the same person who we think we are when we're much older. We grow or we change or we learn about ourselves. And so I think that has a play into being your authentic self, because you may not even know what that is until a later time.
Yeah, I think too that growing does not mean you are denying who you were or looking down on yourself. You know, so just because I might speak differently at work now doesn't mean I'm looking down upon how I speak at home or how I used to speak with my friends or my friends that still speak that way when I'm around them. You know, so I think people often perceive, oh, you're being fake because when I see you at work, you're this way, but out on the street you act a different way. How come you're being fake over there? And to me, I don't think, I think some people are being fake, right? They just put on a whole different show. But again, I think it's different between being fake and just knowing the room and adjusting
Okay,
as you
well,
can.
let's
Hey, Christian, isn't this, if we were to give this a label, aren't we talking about code switching here?
well,
Is that
that's
what
the
this
Exactly.
is?
whole yes.
Yeah, I mean, to Audrey,
That's
yeah.
what we're
I mean,
talking about.
in that
It is
context, yeah,
but see,
absolutely.
and the thing is, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Yeah. I used to. Oh, I used to deal with that with the whole code switching. Um, you know, and I had got to a point where I realized I think everybody kind of code switches in their own degree, and like, and it's basically what you guys are saying already about that, you know, and people that people that that see you act different, when you're in these other environments, half the time they don't share that experience with you. So, the only experience of you that they get to see is you in this way. Because I mean, personally, I don't really see myself, quote unquote, code switching. You know, it's very natural for me now. When I go into work, it's natural. I don't. I'm not saying half the stuff I would say if I was at home
Right.
talking with my brother or my cousins.
Well,
You know, but
mm,
um,
so I'm just okay. So I
what's
do
up?
understand the whole. So, anyways, there is an argument against code switching. There's an argument for and against it, right? From both sides, from all sides, I should say. But I want to apply this now to um, the to your sexuality, for example. So tell me something. If you all went into an interview and they automatically assumed all three of you are straight, and you went into an interview and they automatically assumed that you were gay. So for example, so let's assume you went into an interview on like Fire Island, right? So Fire Island is like notoriously gay, right? So if you somehow got into an interview there, they just assumed that you were gay. And so they told you, they were like, so, your boyfriend or your husband or something like that. Would you correct them, or would you just let them continue assuming that they were, that you were gay, or how would you handle that?
So if you're talking about an interview environment, first of all, that would be a mistake on their part to say husband or wife, right? You just don't say either of those words. You just say partner, right? You just do that. Secondly, I would correct them if they said, how are you and your husband dealing with blah blah. I'm like, oh, I don't have a husband, I have a wife. I would just correct them
Right.
because that's not my situation. If they just somehow assumed I was gay for some reason, I'm not sure how I would know, but I wouldn't care up until the point that it affects me. So your point, if I'm on some reality show and they're coupling people up for some reason, that's when I got like, hey, wait a minute, stop. I think we've made a mistake. This is not going to work for me. But if people at work happen to assume I'm gay, I don't know that I would necessarily care, but I would correct them if they started to use wrong terminology around me. I'd be like, wait a minute. I'd be like, oh no, I'm married to a woman, and they would end up looking stupid, right? But that's their problem. I'm trying to think where it would affect me, where I would feel the need to.
Well, because basically what I'm
difference.
asking is, do you think that it's necessary for? Do you think that it's? I don't know if the word necessary is what I'm looking for, but like you think there's an. Well, I mean, a need would be literally the same thing, but like, do you think it should be a thing for gay people to come out the closet, like when they're going to interviews or when they're going to, becoming actors or whatever the situation is? Do you think it's necessary to just kind of affirm who you are while you're doing these things? And I'm bringing it from an LGBT point of view, but it can be brought from any other type of point of view where you all would think it was pertinent.
Right.
I don't think it's necessary at all. I mean, when I go into an interview, they're not going to ask me, hey, so, what's your sexual orientation? I mean, that's it's like what Chris said. That's a question that's not going to ask. They're not going to ask. It's not necessary. It's not going to change how you perform. Only thing it's going to do is it's just going to change how they look at you.
Which
period.
actually,
it's
exactly, and actually that's what
until
causes
they actually
the
get to
biggest
know
problem,
who you are.
right? So it's not really someone wanting to broadcast who they are, but they don't want to be perceived as this, because then in their work environment, wires get crossed, and then they have to fix that, because then they're like, if you don't handle it in the first like few months, you'll go a year and a half down the line, and then they've always assumed that you were this way, and then you're going to run into a wall where you're going to have to correct them. Should you have corrected them before, or you just wait for that awkward moment to hit later? These type of things do happen. And then also, for you, I didn't know that this is not done in the U.S. anymore, but man, I have been out of the U.S. for a long time. So, but anyways, here they automatically assume I'm straight. They automatically ask me why. For example, I just went to an interview here in Normandy. Well, not here. I'm not in Normandy now, but in Normandy, and they asked me, why, like how I found the house, and I was like, oh, it's my in-laws found the house, and they were like, oh, so you do have family with your wife? And I was, no, it's my husband. They apologize, they correct themselves immediately, but they do ask me that question, and then and in multiple forms.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I think a lot of people would default to that just out of habit. But I can tell you, just as far as HR and smart, interviewing and HR practices, you just don't do that. But one thing I was thinking about, what you're asking is should someone broadcast? I'm thinking about.
I didn't ask if
Rashida Jones. Do you guys know who she is? Well, right, yeah, but do you guys know who Rashida Jones is? She's an actress. She was on Parks and Rec. She was on The Office. Her father's Quincy Jones. I didn't realize, right, that's who her father was, and that she could be considered black. Seeing her act, right. I didn't know. I would have had no idea. She's just seemed like olive skin, right? Should she broadcast the fact that she's black? I don't think she needs to broadcast that. Now, I do think there may be times where she might need to speak up or correct someone, right? I also think that if she were to be more open about the fact that she's black, I'm not sure if she is or she isn't. I just know I wasn't aware. I found out by accident. but it would send a message that she's not ashamed or trying to hide it. So given her status and her popularity, someone not knowing she's Black, it could lead some to assume she's trying to pretend she's not. And so I think to your original question, Nate, should someone broadcast that they're gay? I think it's a fine line between, do I look like I'm trying to hide it and I'm ashamed of it, and therefore I make other people feel ashamed of themselves, versus I'm in this position, you know, I feel like I should be more open just to make others feel like they can be open. And so I don't know if that's a right or wrong, but I do think there's some responsibility to be open about who and what you are, and in when you are kind of out there and well known in the public. I don't know.
I mean, so the way I feel about it is, so I don't broadcast. I don't broadcast my sexuality until, as I said, I'm asked a question, or someone has assumed my wife or girlfriend, and in which I correct them. But I correct them very quickly, and then that's it. But like I said before, once I came out the closet, I didn't care. Like, if you couldn't accept it, then bye, you know, sort of thing. I'm living my life, and I'm trying to, you know, enjoy my life. So I'm not going to get hung up about the fact of whether you think it's, you know, ethically right or whatever to be gay or whatever. I don't care. I don't care about your opinion. But I do think, for example, in Colton Haynes' situation, and in Jonathan Bailey's situation, like, I don't think they wanted to broadcast. In fact, they didn't broadcast. They had to broadcast because of what, and this is why I think that it's so important. They had to broadcast because they were being literally represented as being straight, and they were actually being set up on dates by their representatives to act like they were straight, which was sending a negative image to, you know, their fans and people who, you know, are aspiring to be open and to be honest with themselves or whatever. It shows them that, oh, not even Hollywood can accept you for who you are. Where am I ever going to be accepted? Yeah, I mean, your family already coming out to your family is just, you know. And excuse me, I was also thinking not only just like LGBT, like, you know, orientation or anything like that, but I was also thinking just like, you know, how important is it for us to be authentic in other things that we like, that we know that we would probably be judged for in public. So you all know a lot about me. Maybe, yeah, y'all know a lot about me and a lot of this crazy stuff I get into, right? It's, again, because it's mostly just because I wear it on my sleeve, and I'm not really afraid to put it out there. But to your all's point, really, really, you know, earlier, I don't, like, I just, when the topic comes up, I will discuss it. Otherwise, I don't discuss it. But anyways, you know, you all know a lot about me, and I'm very authentic, but again, I just don't really care. I don't really care if anybody judges me one way or the other. I care about other things, just not really that, because I am who I am. Do you all see that as, so for example, my kinks and stuff like that, you all kind of get an idea where I like. I'm very open about it, but do you all feel like stuff like that that's in your life, or like maybe you feel like you would be judged, so you don't feel like it's really necessary to live that? Do you feel like it kind of strangles you? Anybody? Yeah.
I see you guys thinking deeply. I think that's
A diary.
that's what friends are for. But yeah, that's what friendships are for. I don't think anyone's required to, you know, broadcast things that they're not comfortable with.
Well, they want to be comfortable
out
with
in the open like that. But I do think that I don't know. For example, like, I might enjoy, as a very soft example, like some certain genre of video games, or video games in general. You know, that's still in some sort of looked on as like kind of childish, like, oh, he still play video games. I'm not going to be hiding that. I wouldn't necessarily on a work call, but, oh yeah, I was up, you know, all weekend playing Fortnite. I wouldn't necessarily bring that up on a random work call, just knowing how that could be perceived. Now, maybe that's just me not being my authentic self, but I wouldn't. Now, if I'm talking with a coworker side to side, and that's what I did the weekend, I might bring that up, but it also depends upon,
Right.
is it relevant and what's our relationship like? Am I trying to, if I want a relationship with the person, then, you know, I owe it to them to give a little. It's give and take if you want to have an actual authentic relationship. Outside of a relationship, I think most of anything that's not directly related to work is really not relevant, because also people can start using those things to judge you, put you in a box, kind of change how they think about you. That's not related to what you can do at work. So I think work is a different environment, but I do think if you want to have an actual friendship with someone, you got to at a point be open and willing to be hurt in that way.
Yeah.
I would chime in and say that that's a very good point Chris brought up about relationship. I don't know if I have to broadcast anything to anybody. I think what makes, and you guys are going back and talking authentic self. If I think about these layers, like these circles, I imagine these circles, and there's like different degrees, I guess, within these circles. And so you got people on the outer circle. I don't have to broadcast anything to them. They just know I show up to work on time and I leave and I do my job. I don't have to tell them anything. And then there's people, like you said, that you're close to, that you would share more. And if you're wanting to bring someone in to be closer to you, then you can feel comfortable to share with them. And it's the vulnerability that makes the relationship actually a closer relationship. But I don't think I'm not being my authentic self. If you're not a close friend and I just choose not to tell you what I did over the weekend, yeah, I'm good. I had fun. I tell a lot of people I had a restful weekend. And that's not me hiding anything. I didn't hide anything. I told you enough that I told you what was relevant to the level at which our relationship stands.
Well,
And if you got a problem with that, then won't you try to get to know me and let's spend time, and we can both agree to maybe go down that path, or one of us may choose not to. I'm not interested in being your friend. But I don't think that's a challenge against my authentic self. I'm being as authentic as possible by telling
listen,
you are fine where you are
so
relationally.
like our closing kind of question. So the examples that you all brought up, like Chris said, they're kind of soft. What happens when these things that you're not disclosing to other people, like you can't even disclose to your family and to your friends because for fear of ostracization or something like that? Yeah. So this is very, very poignant in the LGBT community. People have been kicked out. They've been killed because they were discovered that they were gay, or that people discovered that they were gay, or they've been kicked out, especially in Christians are very, very notorious about kicking out their kids, or sending them to camps to change because they don't think that they should be this this way or that way. So then they hide in the closet, so they're not authentic to themselves. Do you think that is okay? Like,
yeah, I think everyone for mental health needs someone, at least one person that they can be.
So you would say like it
around.
would be okay if they had a friend, but they just decided never to tell. So their family would basically never know who they were.
So here's the thing. They have to accept then that the relationship with their family will only be but so deep because you are intentionally hiding this piece from them. Now, if that's your choice, you just then know, hey, I'm only so close to these people. And that's a choice. Now, as long as you have some other outlet to be fully whatever it is that you are, I think you can still have a healthy life. Now, maybe your relationship with your family isn't as healthy as it could be, right? Because you have this big barrier there. But that's a choice. But I think as far as mental health, as long as you have a space to be yourself, I think you can be a healthy individual. Now, whether other relationships are healthy or not, I think it is.
Join in. So let me bring it to your livelihood. Now, your livelihood depends on you not doing anything, not saying anything or whatever. but the assumption is consistently that you're one way. How would you navigate that? How would you suggest someone navigate that?
I think for going back to like Rashida Jones, if she kept getting characters that
Hmm.
were white and she's not, I don't know how much I judge her for taking those roles to like put money in her pocket and feed her family. I,
Well,
I
yeah.
can't judge her for that. If
Hmm.
she's got to make a living, I don't know. I think there's a point where again doing that again can cause damage to
Yeah.
yourself and
Hmm.
to how you're perceived in your community, right? If we all know, hey, Rashida's out here talking about she's white and she's not,
Hmm.
you know, that's not cool. That's something that she has to live with. But if she can live with that and she's able to, feed her family, that's better than maybe her being homeless. I don't think in this environment
Hmm. Yeah.
she'd have to do that. But say it was 100 years ago, maybe she doesn't get to say that I'm black. Maybe she's got to keep that down forever in order
Hmm.
to survive. I'm not mad at her for that. I think it's unfortunate that someone would have to live that way. I don't think they should have to, but I'm not going to judge
Right.
them for doing that. I wish they didn't have to, but I'm not judging them for
What
that.
about you two?
I mean, for a lot of there was the time where a lot of actors and actresses really didn't announce that, or they did for a while and then they stopped. Like, I can't remember what I was looking at. I was looking at The Rock one day, and it on his little thing it says that he's American Samoan, and
Mm.
I was like, oh, that's it. That's all he is.
Right.
And because everybody forgot. It seems like everybody forgot about his daddy. So, and there are actors that don't always, they don't always say these things. They don't, they keep that stuff because it's all about for them.
Hmm.
It's that social image, that persona that they're trying to sell themselves with. Um, so like, and going toward this topic, everybody has that, to some degree, that social image, that persona, and it kind of comes down to the individual, like what they want people to know about them, what they deem necessary for people to know about them, and are they prepared to deal with the reaction of other people? Because when I was young, my mom always taught me that do what you do, but once you do it, you put the reaction in other people's hands,
Yeah.
and you can't get mad at them for
Hmm.
reacting the way they do. You know, you made the choice to do whatever you do.
Hmm.
You leave the reaction to the people who are there to witness it. So it was one of those things where my mom was telling me, think before you act, kind of thing.
Okay.
Think about what's going to happen, how people are going to perceive it. You know, because once you let that cat out of the box, it can't go back in the box. It's just going to just do its thing,
It makes sense. It
whatever
makes
sense
sense.
that makes.
You can't put it back in.
Um,
I understand. Well, Steve, you have, yeah, go ahead. No, I was just asking Steve, did he have anything to add?
yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say it's very unfortunate, and I hope that anyone that has something that they um, would love to share with their family, if their family is not able to handle that information, I hope that, like
Yeah.
Chris said, they would have someone else that they could go to that could at least help them through whatever the process is. Because I think that the idea of family, I think of two different things. I think of you got family that you're born into, you don't have a choice, and there are opportunities to enter in relationships with others that you can describe as family, and hopefully that kind of family can stand up to the plate and kind of help you through the process. And I think this
Right.
applies to anyone going through
Hmm.
any type of challenge. But particularly to your question, Nate,
I
I
definitely
think it
agree.
apply
I
here as
think
well.
so. I'll just give you my point of view. I do. I agree. I think if your family can't handle it, so I came out to my family. Most of my family acted. They just simply didn't care, which was great because you don't want it to be a big thing, you know. But they also didn't expect me to announce it, you know. I felt like I had to announce it, but I don't know why. Like I felt like that was a pressure on me. But I realized afterwards I actually didn't have to announce it, but I didn't know that my family was going to react that way. I thought I had heard all the horror stories, so so I was bracing myself for, you know, this to happen. So like I said, like most of my family just didn't didn't care. Some of my family did, but I left it with them. Like Tim was saying, you know, you leave the reaction to them. They reacted poorly. And I was just like, okay, well, I just told you, like, like now you deal with it, and I'm moving on with my life. And when it comes to jobs, you already explained to you, like, I don't let them make that assumption, but I agree with what you were saying, Chris. It shouldn't even just be assumption by now. Like we should already know. Like there shouldn't be any because it's not really pertinent to whether you can do the job, you know, or anything like that. So there's no real need to bring this up. So to think it does help to build a camaraderie at work, you know, when people know more about you. But the problem is also, and this is why a lot of people don't make friends at work, is because they're afraid that it will be used against them later on for something. And that shouldn't be the case, but it is currently. So, you know, it makes sense that people would hide. I think Colton Haynes and people like him, like Jonathan Bailey, people who are kind of like in the spotlight, I think it was a good thing for them, as Chris was saying, because people who are looking up to them, basically kind of looking up to them, could see it's okay. Like I don't think that they ever wanted to announce it. They don't think that they ever felt like it was necessary. But when the press and stuff turned against them and were trying to represent them in a different light, then they were just like, okay, listen, I gotta be, I gotta be honest about who I am so that you can, you know, whatever. It doesn't mean I'm only willing to play gay roles or anything like that, but don't be trying to portray me as someone, you know, running out here looking to find skirts or something like that. You know, it's not, or whatever. That's a very old term, but like looking to, you know, find, you know, get with girls. So yeah, I think it's very important that, as Steve was saying, I just literally just went through all three, but I think it's very important, like Steve was saying, that you do have a like family, you know, the not necessarily the family that you were born into, but I created a family outside of my born family. I still have a good relationship with my family, my, you know, blood family, but I created a family outside of them who can accept me for who I am, and I accept them for who they are, literally just whatever. And, you know, Chris was saying, and I think that's what friends are for. That is exactly what friends are for. They make a different family where you can just be your authentic self and just be, you know, happy and, you know, whatever, you know, free your mind and stuff like that. So I do wish that for everybody, not just the LGBT community, LGBTQ plus community, but like anybody who's like suffering with like identity crisis and stuff like that. Like they really should be able to find friends that they are just able to be themselves, because that's really kind of how you get through this world, is just learning how to be yourself, I think, in my opinion. So
Yep. Yep. All the bronies out there, all the dudes that like Wink Saga,
what's a brony, by the way?
all you guys.
Oh, yeah,
That's
we
the guys
discussed
that
that.
like
Yeah,
My
okay,
Little
no,
Pony.
that's not me, but definitely Wink Saga.
Yeah.
The Netflix series though, like the cartoon I couldn't get into, but the Netflix series, I'm feeling it. I don't know. I didn't think I was gonna like it either, but I did. Did you see it? You didn't. Neither of you. Oh, you did. Did you like it?
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I
Okay.
want. Yeah. Yeah.
See,
So
thank you,
Oh
Tim.
my
Thank you,
goodness.
Tim. See.
for that, I'm kind of excited.
Look, I wasn't judging. I was just giving examples. I said bronies and Wink Saga. If you don't want to take it
All right,
personal,
so we're gonna wrap this
that's
up.
not my business.
It was, despite our technical,
Nah.
you know, technical technical difficulties, we definitely had a very interesting conversation. So be sure to all our listeners, be sure to check us out on our social medias. We're on Twitter as, okay, thank you, because I knew it was, yeah, because I knew it
Unofficially
wasn't
OP
unofficially
is the
opinionated. So it's
Twitter.
unofficially OP, right? And then YouTube, we're under
Yes.
unofficially opinionated, right?
Yep, and same
Now we
for
have an Instagram.
Facebook
Yes.
and
Okay.
Instagram. And Instagram. Yep. Yeah, just make sure you like and subscribe on whatever app you guys use, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you are.
Definitely.
Like,
And then also
subscribe, and
we have
you know,
on
we'll
Spotify
see you next time.
there we do sometimes post polls and like questions that you to answer. It would be really cool to hear back from you, see hear what you all have to say about the questions that we post with our our episodes. So check that out on I think it's only on Spotify. We're also newly on Deezer for those of you on Deezer who listen to your podcast on Deezer. Was that about it? All right.
Sweet.
Well, we will talk to
I think
y'all
that's it.
later with
I
a
think we got
new
it.
episode. We have an episode once a month, usually at the beginning of the month, with new topics. All right.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Thanks, y'all. Bye, Tim.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Bye, Tim.